A quick run through of day 2, applying everything along with the weather observations and forecast from the day. This is a forecast that we went onto the water with, which was very good on this day. It was very bad the next day. Mainly just the direction, right? Just showing a steady and consistent wind to the right all the way from south to west, which is exactly what we saw. We kind of started out a more like clear and sunny day, or at least less cloud driven. And then as it shifted to a more offshore west southwest and westerly, the clouds became a major factor. Even though the right side was supposed to wind right quite consistently all day long, the left played good in the early races. Right, I think there was opportunities on both sides, but there was definitely some big strong lefties from this kind of from this effect. And even though the wind was going right, let's pull this up. 12 p.m. And then we have I've got a few other screenshots of this wind pattern. If you zoom out more, this southerly, which is a more left direction, was very strong, very significant. And this other direction that's converging with it, this righty moving out over the day, was kind of the forecast. But let's try the other shot, because we're racing right up in here, and this line of here, this lefty pressure, was right up against our race course in the beginning line of the part of the day. So even though the wind's trending right, we have this significant system with a lot of increased pressure that's a little more out of the left. And I think there was a few puffs from that, that made their way onto the race course. And so it was kind of quite interesting. If we were almost oscillating between these two systems. Let's see if the other photo is a little better. Yeah, this one's a little closer. Okay. So yeah, shifting right all day, but this is still a decent big picture signal for the left, especially coupled with the geographic factors that benefit anytime you can get into the mangroves and the beach club zone over here. And we did start to see the right become better, especially, I guess, well, the current did switch from flood to ebb, which helps the right, but we were pretty far over on the right. Yeah, this was when nobody was playing the top half of the outer loop because the right had paid on the first beat. And then Nikki actually saw a big outflow cloud over here on this side and came and played the top left by himself and made some major gains. And that moment was kind of the theme of the switch of the day, from that southerly, almost southeasterly, into like a more cloud-driven westerly. Because then we stopped racing right when there was that big giant shift right with the wind drop. That would have been this flow here kind of moving offshore, this more taken over. And then we had to reset the entire race course and pretty much a wind direction coming straight across here. That's when it was all about understanding inflow and outflow clouds, which I won't go too much into here because I think everyone probably knows a good amount of that. So inflow, outflow clouds, and cloud play. Well, I've got other videos that are tied into this briefing that you can watch for all the cloud stuff. But yeah, big, dark, nasty looking cloud that's pushing down, out, and away from it. Head to it for pressure and shift on the leeward side of it more specifically, because if you go above them, there's actually less wind, because as the wind's pushing down and out, on the upwind side of it, that's actually pushing upwind. Big white fluffy cumulus cloud, it's sucking wind up, so just less wind and bad wind shifts as you head towards it. You just want to stay away from those unless you're sailing onto the upwind side of them, where actually when they're sucking pressure in, if the cumulus is downwind of you and sucking breeze into itself, it's actually going to increase the pressure on the upwind side of itself just a little bit. So once it was full west-southwesterly with heavy cloud-driven systems, it was all just about understanding, reading inflow and outflow clouds. And we have plenty of videos from the day and a debrief on it. The other more interesting variable is that very simple understanding that the wind up high was coming from a more right direction than the wind down low. So while you're looking upwind, trying to, forecast where you want to be, judging the outflow clouds, you have to that's very important. The clouds aren't coming from the wind direction. The clouds are coming from, on that day, about 20 degrees to the right of the wind direction. So you want to know where up the course you're trying to look when you're trying to predict the future. Okay, let's see if I can find this graphic that shows that a little really quickly. This might be, just be patient, guys. Oh, no, I found it pretty good. Okay, so this was go through the videos of the day, and you can see this very, very clearly. Okay, this gradient wind up high, this is the direction that the clouds were filling over the race course, right? If this gray line here that's vertical was the true wind direction, the axis that the course was set to, the clouds on that day were coming almost exactly from this gradient wind direction, okay? Which means that if a line of clouds fills even with the wind, like a front of clouds, which we did see, I think it was a warm front, and that's above this, but I think there was some front of clouds that came through, regardless if it was a warm front or a cold front or whatever, but a front came through, lined up with the wind, as in like it was, the cloud edge was 90 degrees to this gradient wind arrow that I'm showing you. So long story short, the right side of the race course is going to get that wall of clouds or whatever's coming first, right? And then the left side. It doesn't mean that the left side clouds won't be darker, better outflow clouds and still pay. That's actually what we saw. So we had one race that was hard left paying, right? You guys were just in this pressure, right? So this, let's say these black parts are underneath a dark outflow cloud, and these are the gaps in the cloud. We had a first race where people were able to dig into this course left under a big dark outflow cloud, and that was the one where the start line was almost 45 degrees pin favored. Then it got weird. We transitioned into a phase where this is a pretty good graphic for it. We could say the pin end of the start line, I think the second start, this is the one where Caleb Everett went right. Pin end of the start line was here, boat end of the start line was here, and you could get a lot of good love and pressure out of this, but then there was this next cell coming through here. Okay, so the pin end still was favored and great off the line. Bunch of people hit this up and did well off of this. Caleb kind of started like here in the light spot, seeing this coming, and it came quick, and he got to it really quick. Actually, it was interesting. There was a big blue sky before the race, and then it all disappeared, and these two clouds the clouds are forming quick. We would go from blue sky to dark outflow clouds forming. Maybe it was something about how they were going over the coastline. But anyway, Caleb sent it into this by himself. He was like the only good boat that had a good start and exited right, because it was hard to pick up on. The more obvious thing to do was battle for the left, and I think he was fourth at the top mark, they said, after doing a good job of playing the right. So I think the left side maybe still won that beat, but the right side did come in strong, as if you can imagine, the bands moved to the left across the race course, right? So that's why that top right came in and the left was left lighter. So another principle here is, outside of any shifts that are driven from a specific inflow outflow that you see, in general, if you like the clouds that you're underneath and you want to stay in them in good pressure, you want to stay on starboard. That's sending you this way, right? Just staying, because these bands are moving to the left. If you're on starboard, you're moving more in line with their direction. If you see a big gap in the clouds or white fluffy clouds and you feel light pressure and you're stuck underneath it, that's a get onto port side, right? And then you're almost directly opposing the gradient when the direction the clouds are coming from, and you can get into this next band as fast as possible with increased pressure. So I think anyone who is there on that racing that day with those clouds will see a lot of this. Then in our final race, we had a bad one. We exited the start line into basically the last band of the day. So let's say time passed and there was a last good dark outflow cloud line coming through. After this, the sky was just blue. And everyone came off the pin, middle pin. I think both Nikki and Walter came off middle pin with bad starts, actually, but got initial good gains out of this and tacked out along with the people that were winning. So there was a flock that kind of checked into this and tacked and sailed into the light pressure. But there was a lot more to gain out of this. That was weird because that was the last band of pressure from the clouds. After that, it was all blue. There was nothing to the right. The people checked in way, way harder left. Like 4 or 5 boats that were like mid-fleet checked in harder left directly under that last little cloud for the day. And instead of sailing out of it, they stayed on starboard sailing into it, and those guys were way ahead. And then they all jibe set. That was weird because it was a big lefty as well with it. Sorry to waste time right now. That might be the end. Let's just call that. I'll just pause. Right?